Billionaire sees the waitress crying, then finds his own name in her phone. What if the person you've been searching for your entire life has been right in front of you, and you never knew it? At 42, James Richardson had everything money could buy. A penthouse overlooking the city, luxury cars, and a business empire worth billions. But on this rainy Thursday evening, as he sat alone in Murphy's diner on the outskirts of town, he felt emptier than ever. The fluorescent lights flickered above worn vinyl booths, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with something indefinable. Maybe hope, maybe heartbreak. He'd come here to escape the suffocating world of board meetings and fake smiles, seeking the simple comfort of a place where nobody knew his name. That's when he saw her, a woman in her late 30s with auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched an old flip phone to her chest. Little did James know that the phone held the key to everything he'd lost. "Where are you watching from tonight?" The diner was nearly empty except for an elderly man reading a newspaper and a young couple sharing a piece of pie. James had been coming to Murphy's for 3 months now, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and apple pie, and always sitting in the corner booth where he could think without interruption. The waitress, who wore a name tag reading Elena, had served him countless times with a warm smile that seemed genuine in a way that was foreign to his corporate world. She moved with quiet efficiency, refilling coffee cups and clearing tables with the practiced grace of someone who'd been doing this work for years. Tonight was different. Elena stood behind the counter, her shoulders shaking as silent tears fell onto the cracked linoleum floor. Her phone sat open in her trembling hands, its small screen glowing in the dim light. James had never seen such raw pain on someone's face, the kind that comes from deep loss rather than temporary disappointment. Something inside him stirred, a protective instinct he thought he'd buried years ago when the business world taught him that caring was weakness. He'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until he aged out of the system at 18. Building his fortune had been driven by one simple goal: to find the family he'd lost when he was 7 years old. He'd hired the best private investigators, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and followed every lead. But 35 years later, he was still alone, still searching, still hoping that somewhere out there, someone was looking for him too. Elena wiped her eyes with her apron, trying to compose herself as the elderly man approached the counter for his check. She forced a smile, her professional mask sliding back into place, but James could see the cracks. Her hands shook as she made change, and when the man left, she returned to her phone, scrolling through something that made fresh tears fall. James found himself standing up, his feet moving before his mind could stop them. He'd spent decades building walls to protect himself from exactly this kind of emotional involvement, but watching Elena's pain felt like watching his own heart break. The distance between his booth and the counter suddenly felt like the most important journey he'd ever take. James approached the counter slowly, his expensive leather shoes silent on the worn floor. Elena quickly closed her phone and turned away, frantically wiping her eyes with a paper napkin. "Sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll get your check right away." But James didn't move toward the register. Instead, he leaned gently against the counter, his voice softer than it had been in years. "Are you okay?" The simple question seemed to break something inside Elena. Her composure crumbled, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, you don't want to hear about my problems. You've been nothing but kind every time you come in here, and here I am falling apart." She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the empty diner. "My shift ends in 20 minutes, and then I have to go home and tell my 8-year-old daughter that I failed her again." James felt his chest tighten. What happened? The words came out more gently than he'd spoken to anyone in decades. Elena looked up at him, her brown eyes swimming with tears that reflected the diner's harsh lighting. There was something familiar about her eyes, something that tugged at a memory he couldn't quite reach. "My daughter Maya has been sick for months. The doctors say she needs surgery, but I can't afford it. I work 2 jobs, save every penny, but it's never enough." Her voice broke on the last word. She opened her phone again, scrolling to a picture of a young girl with bright eyes and Elena's same warm smile. "I've been calling everyone I can think of, trying to find help. There's this man. I've been searching for him since I was a kid. He might be able to help, but I don't even know if he's real anymore. Elena's finger hovered over a name in her contact list, and James's world tilted on its axis. There, clear as day, was his own name, James Richardson, with a phone number he'd never seen before. The coffee mug slipped from Elena's other hand, shattering on the floor in a crash that seemed to echo through the universe. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Time stopped as James stared at the screen, his mind racing through possibilities he'd never dared to consider. "Where did you get that number?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sudden roar in his ears. Elena's face went pale as she stared at James, then at her phone, then back at James again. The broken coffee mug lay forgotten at her feet as the truth began to dawn on both of them. "You're him," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're really him." Her hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. "But that's impossible. The social worker said you'd never want to be found. She said you'd moved on, started a new life." James felt like he was drowning in memories that rushed back with devastating clarity. A 7-year-old girl with pigtails and scraped knees, crying as the social worker pulled them apart. Elena. His little sister Elena, who used to crawl into his bed during thunderstorms, who made him mud pies in the backyard of their last foster home together. Ellie. The childhood nickname fell from his lips like a prayer. "My God, Ellie, I've been looking for you my entire life." The dam broke then, 35 years of separation and pain pouring out between them. Elena sobbed as she told him about growing up in different foster homes, aging out of the system, working her way through community college while pregnant and alone. She'd kept his contact information all these years, passed down through a chain of social workers and case files, never knowing if it was current, never brave enough to call until tonight when desperation gave her courage. James listened with his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. He thought of all the money he'd spent searching, all the private investigators and dead ends, when she'd been right here in this small town, serving coffee and raising her daughter alone. "I tried to find you," he whispered, his own eyes filling with tears he hadn't shed since childhood. "I never stopped looking. I hired every private investigator on the East Coast." Elena laughed through her tears, a sound that was part joy and part heartbreak. "I got married when I was 19, took my husband's name. When Maya's father left us, I kept it because I thought it would be easier for her." She touched his hand across the counter, her fingers cool against his skin. "I used to dream that my big brother would come find me, that he'd take care of everything like he used to when we were kids. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." James gripped her hand tightly, feeling the missing piece of his soul click back into place after 35 years of wandering. Without hesitation, James pulled out his own phone and dialed his assistant. "Patricia, I need you to contact Dr. Harrison at the Children's Hospital immediately. Tell him James Richardson is calling about an emergency pediatric case, a little girl named Maya who needs surgery. Whatever it costs, whatever they need, make it happen tonight." He looked into Elena's astonished eyes as he spoke. "And Patricia, clear my calendar for the next month. I have some family time to make up for." Elena stared at him in shock as he ended the call. "James, you can't just, the money, I can't let you pay for Maya's surgery. It's too much, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars." But James was already shaking his head, pulling her around the counter to embrace his sister for the first time in 35 years. She melted into his arms, and for a moment, they were just two scared kids again, holding on to each other in a world that had tried to tear them apart. "Ellie, listen to me," he said, pulling back to look into her eyes. "I've spent my entire adult life building this fortune, and you know what? I've been miserable. I had everything except the only thing that mattered, my family. You and Maya, you're my family. This is what the money is for." His voice grew stronger with conviction. "Tomorrow morning, Maya gets the best medical care in the world. Tonight, you're never working another day unless you want to." Elena's manager had been watching from the kitchen, and he approached them with understanding eyes. "Elena, go," he said gently. "Your family needs you, and we'll be fine here. Take all the time you need." The elderly man from earlier had returned, drawn by the commotion, and when he understood what was happening, he pressed a $20 bill into Elena's hand. "For the little girl," he said with a grandfather's smile. As they prepared to leave, James felt a completeness he'd never experienced. The empty penthouse would finally have the laughter of a child, the warmth of family dinners, the chaotic joy of a real home. Elena called her babysitter with shaking hands, explaining that a miracle had happened, that Maya's surgery would proceed as scheduled, that everything was going to be okay. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Standing together in the diner's parking lot under the stars, James and Elena Richardson were no longer lost children searching for home. 6 months later, Maya Richardson was running through the gardens of James's estate, her laughter echoing off the walls as her uncle chased her through the maze of rosebushes their grandmother would have loved. The surgery had been a complete success, and Maya's energy seemed boundless as she explored every corner of her new home. Elena watched from the kitchen window, still sometimes unable to believe this was real, that the little girl who used to cry herself to sleep was now living in a fairy tale. James had kept his word about everything. Elena never returned to the diner except to visit her former co-workers and leave generous tips. Instead, she'd enrolled in nursing school, a dream she'd abandoned years ago but now had the freedom to pursue. Maya attended the best private school in the city, but more importantly, she had a family who loved her unconditionally. The three of them had dinner together every night, sharing stories and homework and the simple joy of belonging somewhere. On quiet evenings, James and Elena would sit on the back porch and piece together their lost years. He told her about the loneliness of building an empire with no one to share it with, how every success felt hollow without family to celebrate with him. She shared the struggles of being a single mother, the nights she'd cried wondering if she was enough for Maya, if her daughter would grow up feeling as lost as she had. Now they understood that they'd both been incomplete, searching for the missing parts of themselves in all the wrong places. The old flip phone sat on Elena's nightstand now, a reminder of the night that changed everything. Sometimes Maya would play with it, pretending to call her uncle with important 8-year-old business, and they would all laugh at how a piece of outdated technology had brought them home to each other. James had the diner's corner booth preserved exactly as it was that night, donating money to keep Murphy's running as a place where other lost souls might find what they were looking for. The private investigators were still on retainer, but now their mission had changed. They helped other families torn apart by the foster system find their way back to each other. James and Elena had learned that their story wasn't unique, that there were thousands of brothers and sisters, parents and children, scattered across the country by circumstances beyond their control. Their foundation provided resources for family reunification, and every success story felt like healing their own childhood wounds. As the sun set over their garden, Maya called them in for the bedtime story she insisted on reading to them every night. They gathered in the living room that was finally full of the sounds of family. Maya's animated voice, Elena's gentle corrections, James's proud laughter. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Sometimes the family we're searching for has been searching for us too, and love always finds a way home.